What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. Curiosity is definitely the buzzword for this interview on ScaleUp Radio. So I interviewed Manda Graham, who is the director of Equal Vision, which is a social enterprise, a community interest company. And she's also founder of something called the Curiosity Museum. And this is where it gets really interesting because they just got to the point of launching a live version into schools of a careers advisory or career support workshop, really, literally in March of 2020 as COVID hit. So they've had to do that magic word of pivoting, and there's a lot of interesting stuff around how Manda has been able to do that, the support that she's had, all sorts of great stuff. You'll hear about how one of the constraints early days was things had to fit in the back of her Volkswagen Polo. So that's a constraint that I've not heard before, certainly on ScaleUp Radio. So really interesting, different ways of looking at things, a lot about the schools and the education market, also thinking about sprint methodology. So some really, really interesting things from Manda on this discussion. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm here today with Manda Graham, who is the director of Equal Vision, CIC, and also founder of Curiosity Museum. So, Manda, welcome.
Hello.
Great to have you with us. So, Curiosity Museum, Equal Vision, what are they all about?
Equal Vision is a company, CIC, that I set up when I first became self-employed way back in 2016. It seems like yesterday, but it was some time ago now. And we are a social enterprise. We're set up to support and enable people to find their voice and to actually work out where they are in the world so that they can then step forward and take action on whatever they really believe in. And so it's all comes from the fact that I've been a creative producer for 22 years, maybe a bit more than that now, working in the arts and working with people. And so I'm also a personal development coach. So all of my work sort of combines those two things. Creativity to give people really inspiring experiences, and the coaching side of things really to support and actually help them to really work out where their place in the world is.
So for people in the creative sector, is that, yes?
This isn't, no, the work we do is for anybody, but we use creativity and creative thinking as our tool.
Right.
So it's working with artists. So I used to be the arts officer at Malvern Hills District Council, and prior to that managed a stately home. So I've got a lot of experience of working in the arts, producing big events and festivals and all sorts of things. So Equal Vision sort of is the what happens when I'm allowed to get out into the world, having been in public sector. And this is what the result is. So we've done all sorts of things like heritage trails in Worcester, something called Hidden Histories Worcester, where we had a burlesque dancer, a flea circus, and craft workshops, helping people to understand the history of Worcester, that kind of thing. So we try and give people something that they don't expect, and really get them to think.
Good stuff. And who's the we?
So I have I have a team. I work with, we employ freelancers. We're all freelancers, including myself. And the reason we do that is that we can be really super flexible. So we have, I think last Christmas, I sent 16 Christmas cards, and it was that moment I thought, wow, we have 16 people working for us, but all days here, there. And we have a small team at the moment of myself, our marketing manager, Rebecca, and Graham, who's our digital designer. And rolling back to the question you asked me a long time ago, we're the team really that are working on the Curiosity Museum, which is our main project now. It's kind of taken over our worlds. So this sounds fascinating, and I know this has been germinating for some little time, hasn't it? So tell us about the Curiosity Museum. So the Curiosity Museum, so where that came from, and this is, I suppose, the start of our scale-up journey. We've been producing arts events and projects for some time, and all of it funded through Arts Council, Community Fund, various places. People would commission us to do things, but none of it was a constant flow of income. And so I thought, hang on a second, I wonder if we can use the arts as a tool to create some kind of product that will do the inspiring thing that we love, but actually could be responding to different agendas. And so I went to the University of Worcester. I was chatting with Val Yates, who's their Director of Inclusion. And I said, I think creativity can solve the world's problems. And she went, can I challenge you then? And I said, yeah, I reckon you can. And she said, okay, right. I'd love to create something that works with young people in rural areas. We find it quite hard to reach them from the University of Worcester. And she said, could I challenge you to come up with something? And I said, yeah, okay. And I went off, and half an hour later, I'd had a chat with one of our artists, and we'd come up with something called the Dream Machine. And that was back in 2017. So it all started way back then. And we went into Tenbury High and we tested it. And we worked with the kids. We're a research-led organisation. So we believe in starting with the people we're going to work with, not really assuming anything, but going in and playing. Right. We like having fun. People that we work with like to have fun. And so we take creative tools. So it might be craft activities, might be drama, comes from all sorts of different places. And we went in and used different activities to explore careers. Because we said, actually, wouldn't it be interesting if we could help those young people to dream? Okay. And so having done 2 or 3 weeks of different workshops with different age kids, we worked out what worked, what didn't work, and we threw a lot of it in the dustbin, and we came out with actually these things took the kids from the start where they had no idea at all to an end point where they were absolutely buzzing and had realised their own skill set through the power of curiosity.
You're making me think back to my school days and my chats with the career officer or whatever they were called. I didn't come out buzzing from those chats.
No, and this is it, and that's where we came. So we came out with the Dream Machine, which then turned into the Curiosity Museum, and we created what was brilliant, beautiful, and wonderful. But it was actually quite a heavy and huge structure. It wasn't very packable at all. We used to pick it up in a long wheelbase van, pack it into the back of the van, and strap it in with
right. So you had a set essentially, and
we had this. It was sort of a set, except it took 4 hours to set up, 4 hours to take down, and it went to the back of a van. Absolutely beautiful. Kids loved it. But in terms of actually costing it and selling it out, it came out at some ridiculous several £1,000s, really, to deliver it anywhere. So we delivered it quite a few times, and we went out and we tested the theory of it. And we're like, this is great, but just couldn't get past this thing of a sort of sinking feeling whenever I got to the money question with anybody. Everybody was sold at this sounds great. This sounds like something that's going to take kids from I have no idea at all to wow, I'm buzzing, and then really understand themselves in between. So we delivered that for a while. This was back in 2017, got to about 2018 and had run out of funding, but it had taken us to a point where we developed a process.
So we'd say run out of funding. So this was funded then, Pete? You were getting funds. The schools weren't paying directly, if you like, for it. There was funds coming somewhere else, were there?
Yeah, so the Arts Council and the Elmley Foundation, who are a local trust in Herefordshire and Worcestershire that support arts organisations. And also I think we had some money from Awards for All. But I mean, I am a fundraiser, as you have to be in the arts, a fundraiser as well as an arts producer. Yeah. So I've raised, I think, about 2 million. I added it all up and I was like, wow, I must be a fundraiser then.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's hard work and it's like buying a lottery ticket. And so went out and thought, okay, next step with this, you have to prove development if you're raising funds. So my next stage was, okay, I love the concept and I can't put this one to one side. It's sort of eating away at me. What would happen if we commissioned a set designer to produce us a set that would fit in the back of my VW Polo? And so that was the top of the brief, was it does this thing, but it must fit into the back of my VW Polo and not
love it.
Wheelbase van.
I love it. I'm all for innovation within constraints. That's the first time I've heard the back of a VW Polo being the key constraint. Excellent.
That's it. So and actually what we did also was we took the whole process through. I don't know whether you've come across Google. I think it's Google Innovation, who've got this process sprint, which is really interesting, and it's to do with agile processes. So I'm really interested in processes, and somebody said to me, you should have a look at the sprint process, there's a really good book on it. And I went and ordered the book like you do and read it cover to cover in about 2 nights and went, this is the answer, this is product development. So we went through an iterative process. Basically taking the sprint process is supposed to, I think, take place in about a week, but being us, we took it apart and kind of reassembled it with various creative teams. Half of the Worcestershire education sector, who by which time we'd managed to get in touch with. I kind of just ended up talking to all sorts of people and everybody's like, we love this thing, let's get on board. So we performed ourselves a sprint sort of team made up of Judy, she's now, Judy Gibb, who is the head of skills development team at the LEP. She came as an advisor. We had people from Hereford Art College who were also sort of our advice people. We had young people, artists, all sorts of different people that we went, actually, these people have all got expertise that we want to draw out. And my wonderful friend Bryony, who is an expert facilitator. So she is the person who is great at herding cats and is essential when you work with creatives, including myself.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where we got to. And we ended up creating a version of the Curiosity Museum where we went, hang on a second, what are the key activities? And we realised in the original version there were 19 activities in one day, which even in a whole day for a young person is quite a lot. Right. We stripped it back. We took out the key, the thread, the golden thread that ran through it, and ended up with quite a fairly open process of coaching questions, really, that we then went into schools, and we could do 5 in a day, and we could work with 150 students. So rather than working with 20 in one day with this behemoth but beautiful Curiosity Museum, we're suddenly working with this version, which we went, okay, we're working with 150 kids. That's a year group, approximately. Right. We're suddenly able to set it up in half an hour. We can take it down in less, and it becomes a lot more feasible. Plus, we've taken on board a lot of feedback from teachers, and they've said, what we'd love is for you to produce part of all of the feedback you're getting from students, can we have that? And we went, well, you can, but we kind of want the students to have it. They're our primary concern. So we've put a duplicate copy form in that the kids fill in during the session. Hey presto, the school gets a pile of reports from the session of exactly what their young people have been thinking as they've gone through the process. So we thought, brilliant, this is going to sell really well. So we sorted ourselves out. We've got our plan together with Rebecca, my comms manager. And we thought, right, we'll go to the skills show in Worcester. This will be where we'll launch it. And so we'd been the previous year actually with the big version of Curiosity Museum, and they welcomed us back. They know us quite well by now. And so we got there, and it's March 2020. Mm-hmm. And so we're launching a project that goes into schools in March 2020. Now, anybody in the world we're in now will remember what happened in March 2020, which is the COVID pandemic was just about starting at the moment we were launching the Curiosity Museum live.
It's what you call timing?
Absolutely brilliant timing. Yeah, absolutely. We worked with, we had 297 people through that day, and we were running a drop-in version. So we were so busy, and we had a wonderful time. And I had conversations with people going, person from the DWP said, I need to call you. And it was just one of those days where you come out of it absolutely buzzing and go, whew, what happened there? But at the same time, I was getting phone calls from schools saying, can we postpone? There's this thing called COVID. Have you heard of it? And I said, we've got the ante back on the table. We're not really sure what to do with it. And I've got some masks there as well, because I was told I should bring them, but we didn't really know what to do. And so all of our sessions that we had booked were cancelled that day by the end of the day. We had a brilliant day. Everybody loved what we were doing. But my work just vanished after that. I also work as a fundraiser with a lot of arts companies, and I was working with a lot of theatres at the time, and all of that fundraising disappeared. So I had loads of free time.
So your world collapsed as well as it did for me.
Absolutely.
And what just before we get into that, what was the proposed funding model then for the revised version?
So the plan was that we could now charge, I think £1,500 was what we came up with. So it worked out as around about, I can't remember what it was. It's £10 per head per student.
Yeah, that'll be about right.
And so for people, we had bookings from pupil premium schools and also outreach for the University of Worcester. Okay. Had actually was funding us to go into various schools in Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So we had these two different markets that we were thinking, this is interesting. And when you're at that sort of stage, similar stage to where we are now, actually, but we'll come back to that later. We'd been and we'd sold it into a few schools at this price. We'd got these bookings that were there, and we thought, this might just work, but we hadn't really got any further than that. Yeah. But the idea was that would then work with the whole school for one. It was a almost a pop-up theatrical careers experience. Touring into schools, but we had geographical. There were lots of constraints still.
And what did it look like, or what would it have looked like from if I'm a student? What would I see? How would it appear to me?
So it's basically we've got it's all very steampunk styled. So we've got a toolkit, and the Curiosity Museum Live still exists. It's in my shed as we speak. And so we've got a toolkit. We've got two sort of, I suppose, Victorian trunks that open up. And then the team all wear aprons, and I've got like a top hat with goggles on it. And I normally wear my red sparkly docks as well, which the kids love. And I'm far more interested in the red sparkly docks than anything else. So inside those, so all it is a very small amount of kit, really. And so we open these up, and inside the three different trunks and boxes, we've got 32 curious objects. And the curious objects are, I suppose, is the starting point for the young people. So as they go we have a form which each student will turn up. They'll sit down at the table in their school hall, and the form leads them through a series of coaching questions in a 45-minute session. The first question is, what makes you curious? And we start with a conversation between our team members about what they found curious when they were younger, and we get we get a bit stupid, and they're like, "You're adults don't do stupid," and we're like, "Oh yeah, we were curious into things that you wouldn't expect. Hey, how about you?" And we start them off. We kind of, it's quite a chilled experience, but we get them a little bit excited at the start, just to start them off in a place. Our theory was always, let's give them a non-classroom kind of feel to the day. And that's where they start. So then we invite them into the Curiosity Museum, which basically just means they come and sit at the tables. It's still quite classroomy, really. But they then have a form in front of them, which is not, everything's not very schooly. They've got spaces to fill in all the questions. And so they fill in what makes them curious, what were they interested in when they were younger. We then invite them into the Curiosity Museum, and we've got all sorts of things, nothing that they would go specifically, oh yeah, that's that job. I don't know, there are a few. We don't make it too bizarre, but we've got like a little inflatable flamingo rubber ring, which represents tourism, obviously.
Okay.
We have got we've got a police light, like a blue light, that actually the battery still hasn't run out. I checked it yesterday. I was like, that's been going since 2017. But Duracell, excellent work. So it's and we've got all sorts of things. A paintbrush in there. There's lots of different things. A camera. Robot arm for engineers. So they go in, we ask them to pick an object they're drawn to. We don't tell them why. And we say to the teachers involved, because we always involve one teacher in each school so they know what we've been doing and they can then take it back into the school. And our main thing is don't it's about coaching these young people. They know the answers. Unless they're really stuck, don't tell them what they should be doing. Actually just encourage and support them and hold the space for them and allow them to really explore the Curiosity Museum. And then once they've done that, they come back, sit down, and we've got boxes on each table, and each object links to a career area, which is in the UK Careers Strategy. So everything we do links to the UK Careers Service website. We've actually cut and pasted a lot of the words from the website into so actually everything is very Googleable, and everything they can then search on in the future. So they use the information on a card that they pick up as soon as they get back to their table, and then they complete the rest of the process in quite a mindful way. We just really get them all chilled out, and they really get into it, unless you get a group of boys who get into something stupid. But that's fine. We kind of stop them distracting everybody else, and actually quite often tease them out of the getting obsessed with money side of things. But that's just boys. So it's often the really, really quiet ones that just sit there and just get into writing and just get into their own heads and really come out of the process having looked at. So what did you discover from the Curiosity Museum? Like, we get this, so the card that they get that's associated with the object, and this also works in the digital version, which I haven't mentioned yet. I've just ruined my punchline.
Definitely.
But so inside there, when they sit down, they have a information sheet, and it basically gives them information on the jobs, the skills, and case studies on that job area. And there'll be 20 or 30 jobs that they can choose from. So we then get them to pick jobs, skills, anything that they feel that they can relate to, but they've not got a lot of time. We give them about 5 or 6 minutes. So it's not a comprehension exercise. It's more of actually, what were you drawn to? And the first question they come to after they've had the time to kind of just scribble some notes down on the piece of paper is, what inspired and excited you? And so from that jumping off point, then we sort of move into, what are your next steps? Who are you going to tell about what you've discovered today? And then finally, the last question is, so what's your goal? And we ask them to set a goal. And then the final thing, which is the most popular thing apart from my docs, is they each take their forms after we've managed to wrestle the bottom copy off of their school. And we give them each an envelope, and then they close the envelope, and we give them the stamp, which says, keep being curious. And so we go around with each one of them and actually give them just a moment each. And we ask them to think of their goal and use the stamp, which says, keep being curious, onto their envelope. And then that is theirs to keep. So it's all quite symbolic, and it all kind of gives them that feeling of completing a process, of actually having something to take away themselves, So
fantastic. Yeah. So you've got all this together. It fits in the back of your Volkswagen Polo, and COVID hits.
So COVID hit, and I sat there for a bit and thought, oh, well, this is nice. I could go and walk. I could be the artist that I always want to be. I felt a bit insane because I had no money coming in at the time, but hey, never mind. Then the government grant came along. So it's like, yeah, I'm quite enjoying this. And then the Arts Council produced some emergency funding. And I was just about to apply for the artist grant, which was $3,000. And I thought that would be nice. I could keep being an artist, keep wandering around and walking from my house to Worcester, walking from Malvern Link to Worcester as a bit of a challenge one day and all these sorts of things. And then I went, hang on a second, 2 days to go. I thought, no, wonder what a virtual curiosity museum would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I messaged, WhatsApped a guy I'd been sitting opposite at a business support program just 3 weeks or whenever it was, as COVID struck. I was on a business support program at the Kiln in Worcester, and I messaged this guy, Dan, that I'd been sitting opposite, who was a web designer. And I went, Dan, right, I need some words, I need a budget. I have no idea what a digital version of the Curiosity Museum would look like, but I need to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about to the Arts Council. And so they gave us a grant. And so where are we? In March 2023, we will be back at the Skills Show. So that is the 8th of March, very shortly. We will be there with the Curiosity Museum live again, as we did when we were there last. Mm-hmm. But we now have the Curiosity Museum online. We have a computer game version, which does feel like, although it's taken a lot of work and a lot of amazing people to produce it, does feel slightly magic that it's that we have pivoted. That's the thing. I look back and go, oh yes, we've done that pivoting thing, but people say they do. No, we appear to have done that, and we now have a really scalable product with no geographical boundaries. We have actually so much learning, because we've worked with so many young people and so many organisations. Mm-hmm. And then I got to this year wasn't the end of it. So I got to just in the middle of COVID, and I suddenly had this digital prototype, and actually it's beta den that were the key to us getting where we are now. Right. We've just done 9 months on Worcestershire LEP's tech accelerator programme, which is a good job, because this time last year, I was kind of going, I have a prototype Curiosity Museum. I have no idea what to do with it. And actually, it would have taken us about 3 years to get 3 years if we'd made it to get to where we are now. But thank you to them, really. We've got to this stage where, we're now, and actually BizSmart as well. Sorry, I should give you the credit where it's due, because we've just finished off at Beta Den and we jumped onto the BizSmart programme, and that's carried us through to the final bit, which is our launch, which is March 2023. Brilliant. Of our new, hopefully, income generator. And this is what I said in 2017.
So how's it going to make money? How's that going to work?
So the great thing about it is we've done some more research more recently, and in November 2021, although that doesn't sound that recent for a digital product, that is. And at that point, we tested it with 150 young people, and the data came out that it is now 89% of the students who took part had increased career knowledge. 70% had increased career motivation. And then we also had 50% had increased confidence. And in particular, the kids that really benefited were the ones that were unmotivated, so had various barriers, or even were just struggling at school. And I think in these post-COVID times, what we're hearing more and more with the different schools we're working with is, one, kids love digital environments, and two, the ambition. Kids are struggling with ambition at the moment. They've sort of been closed down, and there's a lot of people we're talking to now who are going, we're not sure how to get them to open back up again. Okay. And adults can't tell them. The Curiosity Museum is actually a student-led space. It doesn't require adults to tell students anything. It actually supports the students to understand themselves, understand why it's important to be curious, and understand, actually, well, not just understand, but explore. I think there's 27 different job areas covering the whole of the careers sector for them to choose from. And I think, different to any other careers process that exists. It opens doors rather than funneling them down one route.
Okay.
So whilst that doesn't give you the answer to your question, that's kind of the kind of what we're selling is like, yeah, it does this thing that nobody else does. And so we're talking to the people we were talking to before. So we're talking to the universities, we're talking to the schools, but we're actually talking now at a much lower price point.
Right.
And that for me is brilliant, because it means that we can go I can go to a school, and whilst I used to say it's £1,500 for a day for 150 students, I can now go in and I can say, okay, if you've got 150 students a year group, it's 1,500 quid for a whole year.
Right.
A license to the Curiosity Museum for them to explore every day of the week if they chose to. Also, actually, if you want us to work with 2 year groups, not just one, that's only an extra 300 quid. It's up only like just under £2,000 to work with 2 year groups. Okay. And it's just got this thing that means the scalability of digital.
Okay, so good. So fantastic. So what were some of the key steps then for you through Beta-Den maybe, but that transition from going from we've got the live product, the Curiosity Museum live, want to make a prototype and want to get it developed. What were some of the key steps along the way and learnings that you had?
The biggest learnings for us were really around, I suppose, support. I mean, I mentioned Beta-Den, I mentioned you guys at BizSmart. Actually, understanding where our skill gaps were.
Okay.
And asking for help.
Yeah.
And just, listening, I suppose, and listening to people who weren't necessarily from our sector, because I've been in the art sector for years. And I suppose from my background working in a local authority, it's there's very different voices within the business sector, and it's been really interesting learning from people who I don't know, maybe went, oh, well, you're not like me when I met them, and this might be meeting them via Zoom or whatever, but then going, oh, we've learned a lot from each other. So that definitely. The biggest thing for me actually as a business owner and founder is that I never pay myself to do all of the hours that I do. And right. I've given myself permission to do that now, because I used to just beat myself up about it constantly. And I just go, yeah, you do need time and space, but I'm passionate and I'm driven by that, and I will always work like that. So that's fine. And that's my choice. But the moment I realised I needed to pay other people to do the things that, one, I'm not great at, or just actually, for me, I'm as long as I've made because we're a social enterprise, I'm very interested in how we grow, but when I was thinking about various people were saying, oh, you can grow and then exit and you can sell it for whatever. And I was like, it really didn't motivate me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I realized that actually, as a CIC, this product actually isn't mine.
Yeah.
We're a not-for-profit, and it will make money for us to make more creative programs, to make more things for more people.
Yeah.
That was a massive motivator for me. So really realizing what motivates you and giving yourself permission to listen to yourself and not be trying to follow somebody else's track. I was kind of jumping onto this limited company track in my head, but feeling there was a barrier there.
Okay. And
so actually, as soon as I realized that any money we could make would go back into the process, and allow more creatives to be paid to do more things, more young people to have more experiences, all of that sort of thing, just really drives me. Yeah, and the thing I was saying about paying other people to do things, I'm happier to work less or to be paid to work less. But actually then to pay other team members to take on. So when I don't know, a big piece of work comes along, or we get the okay on a piece of funding, I've got a team working around me. And then when we're scaling, I can ask them all to do half a day more because we're all freelancers. So they're employed for, say, 1 day a week at the moment, and it might be 1.5 days a week. And I'm certainly finding that's making that side of scaling. It means I don't have to finance bringing on board just one person to do one thing. So I'm finding that's working quite well.
Excellent. So there must have been some specific challenges in going from being a physical product to being a digital product. So how, what sort of things did you come across there? How did you get? You mentioned that you were sat across from Dan and you asked him to put a website together. So how did you even, once you got the funding, how did you even get to the point of having a prototype?
It's funny because actually it's very similar to running any project, except that we didn't have a digital designer and I didn't know what we wanted. So I got the same chap, Dan. I phoned him and I went, right, Dan, we got the funding. What is it that we want? Because you know what it's like in different sectors. It's very specific. And in the digital sector, a digital designer, a website designer, a digital designer, an app designer. And actually they're not called designers, they're called all sorts of funny things. I still don't know what they're called. Graham, who is our web designer, I said to him, so I keep always asking, if you got run over by a bus, Graham, I'm really sorry to say that, but you're like gold dust, what would happen? And he's like, well, you wouldn't write a brief that you wrote when you employed me, is what he told me just recently. He said, I might write you one soon so that you know what you're looking for. And I'm like, well, I'm hoping you won't get run over by a bus. But he did actually get COVID twice in succession recently. And I went, yeah, it's not just getting run over by a bus, Graham. It's actually, what if you couldn't work for a bit? And we were absolutely at that point where, well, I mean, anything really, but we need to move fast at the moment. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing that was different, actually. It was just the skill set. We still have myself doing all sorts of bits and pieces. We've still got finance people, we've still got marketing people, we've still got our creative team and our designers, actually, that we've built up over years. So and actually, we started working on Zoom back before COVID. The original sprint we did, which turned the Curiosity Museum original version, the 2017 version, into the one that went into the back of my car. Yeah, that was on Zoom. We did all of that on Zoom. So I think we started working on Zoom quite a while before, because we're all dispersed. So Graham, our digital designer, I've never met him. He lives in Aberdeen. Right. We tried to meet recently and we still haven't managed it. So
how did you find him?
He is a friend of a friend, right, who was based in Bristol and now lives in Worcester. So all of our recruitment happens via networks of other freelancers. So
is the finished product? Is it basically is it a website? Is it an app? What is it? So it's a website, because when we talked to schools, they said have it web based. Right. We've got very low tech specs in most schools. Okay. Make sure it's web-based and keep it really simple. So it's actually very, very simple, and it's a process. It's on a website with a CRM, a database behind it that holds all the information, and each of the students gets a license, and so that's how they log on. Mm-hmm. And then we can give them a license for however long. Say they might have a course in Heart of Worcester College we're talking to, might have a 3-year course there. We could give them a license for that sort of period. And yeah, it just works like that, really. And what were some of with the testing of it? What were some of the lessons that you learned through the feedback? I mean, we're still learning now. That is the biggest thing actually with digital that I hadn't imagined, is it takes ages. I'd really imagined, I thought a digital product would be just, oh yeah, you can change everything really quickly and easily. But we're constantly getting feedback. We've got young testers who are friends of friends and friends of kids and anybody we talk to. We've got schools testing it for us at the moment. And so there's interesting things that you wouldn't expect, like how schools log into these sorts of things. Cause massive problems, where our web designer and the tech mentor on Beta Den got so completely wound up in this problem
that was going to destroy the whole thing. I mean, we were kind of going, how do they log on? How do they log on? And the tech people got so just obsessed with this particular route. And then I went and spoke to my sister-in-law, who is a head teacher, and she went, students have ways of identifying themselves. We have to, and they have logins in schools. Go to each of the schools and ask them to give you like the login number for that student. The schools will sort that out for you. And I just went back to the tech team and went, right, if only I'd asked Amy first, because she's the person that knows. And that just reminded me to do what we do most of the time, is to go and talk to our user.
Yeah.
Dialogue with user all of the time, and then we ask them really silly questions, and we just go, hey, what do you think of this? And they go in and have a go and actually come back with a different answer, normally something that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
The kids love, we have case study films of young adults working in the job areas.
Okay.
I don't know why it surprises me, but it does. They're the last thing in the Curiosity Museum, and the kids watch them. They're 3 minutes long, and they pretty much watch them start to finish, almost like they're collecting them. Yeah. It's like it's the prize at the end of the process.
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to go down the route of saying, how do you, because there's a big difference with the physical in-person live event where they can touch these things. You can really get that kind of engagement. It's quite hard sometimes to make that on the digital platform. I was going to ask you, and maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. But actually, on the flip side, things like those videos are probably more engaging, because that's harder to do when you're in person with somebody, isn't it? Unless you had a laptop or whatever with you anyway for that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I suppose we're exploring that more and more now. It's taken us a very long time to get to the point where we had a prototype, but I had to apologise to the young people who were testing it. I was like, yeah, it's not very exciting. It's a wireframe. It doesn't look very pretty. Actually, now the objects look really cool. Various people have said to me, it looks so different to any other digital education project, because it's created by creatives. We want it to look really cool. And we've probably put some really pointless, silly things in there just to keep the kids a play space. Yeah. So it is a digital play space. And actually, Graham's always saying to me, don't assume anything. Our testers need to tell us that needs to change. Keep it really simple, keep it really clean. And we only change things when we get feedback from a user that says, actually, that's confusing, that's stressing me out, or whatever. And I desperately want to put something gamey in, like gamification, like some challenges, but we're not getting back from anybody that's needed. And actually, the world's so full of that, and young people are really used to that. So we're kind of treading really gently, because we want to make it a very, very sort of restful place that they feel comfortable and chilled out, rather than it being this sort of world of digital, which, I mean, actually, I can't assume that young people experience it like that, because I'm an adult. So we just need to keep testing, getting feedback, and then responding with that feedback and testing some more. And we are talking to schools about the teacher resources. I think it's quite important that we have a layer of teaching resources and a way of it being either self-led, because actually some schools, or most schools, have got very little time. So actually something where students can go in and be led themselves through the process is great. But we do appreciate, obviously, that sometimes actually the teacher would like to do a whole class session. So we're going to set up a version and then test it that stops at certain points and goes, okay, now you need to pause. Right. And we've got a PowerPoint that then will go up on the screen that teachers can then use for particular things. I mean, and then follow-on activities. We're talking to various people at the moment, and actually the same thing has come up where they've said, we don't want to raise expectation. It's fine to dream, but actually when little Johnny pops out of the Curiosity Museum buzzing and wanting to be an astronaut, what are you going to do about it? And I went, okay, we can produce a resource that will help them to have a bit of a reality check without grounding them completely. But there are activities that we can suggest and suggest the class do that is attached to the Curiosity Museum. But in our experience, I mean, the first young person who tested it was one of my friend's kids. She was the one I didn't really realise, because the live Curiosity Museum, they do it once. And I just thought they'd do the digital version once. And she came up to me and she went, "Can I go in again?" And I went, yeah, of course you can go in again. And she went back and she went through the whole thing and she explored all of the different routes that she could go down. And she came back and she was like, and she still wants to be an artist now, but she found the paintbrush in there and she's like, and she said she hadn't even thought of being an architect, but she discovered that while she was in there.
Great. Yeah.
And so for kids who know what they want to do, they can go in and they can find that and then they can go down one route. For kids who aren't sure, they can go in today. They could come out again. They could go in next week, unguided by their teacher.
Yeah.
They could go in during any sort of tutor time. They could kind of get access and go in or whatever. We're exploring like how it links. So our next phase, we're busy. So the thing I haven't said is about launching now at the launching at the Skills Show is where we are in terms of this product. But at the same time, we're looking at our income stream around the Curiosity Museum is a massive thing to make that work. And I have to make myself focus in order to go, no, this quarter, thanks to BizSmart's 90-day planning process, this quarter is about sales of the Curiosity Museum. But at the same time, I'm also having to think about funding for the next phase, because one of our key income streams is funding. And so we are going to do a community fund to fund an SEN pilot of the Curiosity Museum, because as we've said, I can't assume, we've tried it actually, the Curiosity Museum Live, we had a group of young adults in the pre-COVID times session, having the time of their lives, exploring careers and just being allowed to be themselves. And their teacher who was with them came up to me and just went, "This is magic." And I went, yeah, it kind of is. It's like, well, I'm a coach. I kind of think all of that it helps people tap into a place that they wouldn't be able to without that sort of support from the right person or the right structure. And so I went to speak to the Careers and Enterprise Company, because I kind of like always trying to go in, like find the people at the top of the tree. So the Careers and Enterprise Company are the UK umbrella body for careers. So I kind of went there and was just knocking on doors until I could find somebody who talked to me. So Kelly Dillon is the head of outreach and inclusion at the Careers and Enterprise Company. And she said, you know what, there's no career support or no real career support for SEN young people. This was about 4 years ago, so I don't forget things either. Things kind of go in and I'm like, planted a seed there. And so that's why we're now putting together in Worcestershire an SEN pilot to look at what next, and to look at actually at the Heart of Worcester College. I was chatting to some of their team there yesterday to feed in data and information that can help me put together the application. And they were saying, they said, they were buzzing as I was chatting to them about the possibilities. And they said it's actually a space where young people can investigate things in their own time and space that is needed for most of those young people.
Right.
My concern is it won't communicate in the way they need to communicate. So like one of their teachers said, they love whiteboards. And I said, well, we could put a whiteboard in there. Actually, they could have their own personal whiteboard rather than the form that we use at the moment. So we're probably, because we've used the acronym SEN a few times, might be some people listening that aren't quite sure what that refers to. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So that's the special educational needs and disabilities. So young people or young adults in that, which covers all sorts of autism and dyspraxia and the whole range of disabilities. In fact, we're working with New College Worcester as a part of our SEN pilot, because of course being partially sighted is certainly within the realms of a barrier to education and careers. So we're really interested in how the Curiosity Museum can work with young people from standard school settings. But the thing we're hearing most is that there's a real a lack of career support or the right thing for young people with barriers to learning. So we're kind of moving into that zone. Whilst trying to focus on selling the Curiosity
All
Museum.
right, good. So next 9 days all about sales. So what so we got the launch coming up on March the 8th, I think you said, did you?
I don't know whether I said, but it is.
March the 8th. Brilliant. And what's your dream? What does good look like?
I would love it if we had we're in a beta testing phase, so I would love it if we had a enthusiastic cross-section of schools and colleges who jumped on board at the skills show.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to bring them on board so that what we're planning to do is offer them a kind of half price ticket to the Curiosity Museum. So licenses at half price, but the other part they pay for that is to give us feedback. So the feedback will be from start to finish, so we can really super test what we're doing and polish it, I suppose, because we know it works, but we haven't done the onboarding. We haven't actually had it live working in schools and colleges 24/7. Well, not 24/7, but actually proper live yet. So autumn 2023 to Christmas 2023, I would love really to have, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 schools and colleges probably from the Worcestershire, Herefordshire area, actually work using the Curiosity Museum, giving us the feedback that we need to, really, really know it works. And for it to, really make a massive difference to those young people, that they can find themselves, find their way. And just, I suppose, to help schools make the careers conversations and journeys for those young people much easier.
So if we're sitting here in 5 years' time, what would you say would be great, would be success? The enthusiast in me wants to go, UK wide. But actually, when I do my figures and I do my budgets and I do my sensible head, actually just working with, I don't know, maybe 50% of the schools across the West Midlands. I mean, geography doesn't matter actually, because we can go wherever. But that would be amazing if we'd really got into a slipstream with schools. Because we can, the thing with the beta testing thing is we really want to work with schools and colleges who can help us to help them. So we create a brand new tool that is, has got the things that nobody else has got, that actually teachers dream that they could have. Yeah. And we're kind of going, hey, we've got this thing. And actually at this moment, it's got a lot of flexibility in it. And that will then mean that we can create, we've got a cost-effective tool that can go out very easily to, thousands, hundreds of thousands of students, and just inspire them all and put them in a place where they just really understand how important it is to be curious, and that actually they'll need to keep doing that through their lives, because you don't just get a job for life these days. So it's really important, as we creatives know, that actually you might have a portfolio career. So always be curious. Keep being curious. Yeah, there's a good takeaway, isn't it? Yeah. So, been lovely talking to you, Manda, and I obviously wish you all the best with it. It sounds like a really great project, and I perhaps wish I'd had a bit more of that sort of advice when I was back at school, thinking about what careers to do. Couple of quick fire questions to finish on. Are you up for that? Yeah, absolutely. So, if you were to go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself? Keep being curious, obviously. Yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? Good. Any books or podcasts you would recommend? You mentioned one already, didn't you? About. I mean, I think The Sprint. So it's I can't see it on the bookshelf over there. It's Sprint by Jake Knapp, and I can't remember what the other guy is, but it's a superb book about product development, and we learnt a lot. But it's a really practical process. And we've used it. Actually, I'm just writing it into the community fund bid as the sort of tool that we will follow through that, because it was very good and very helpful. Excellent. Good. Any apps or bits of software that you found particularly useful? So we use Asana. Okay. We've gone through lots and lots of different possible tools, but actually, as we are a flexible team and none of us are based in the same place, and nor do I ever want us to be, all of our projects are now managed using Asana. And
And yeah, that's really the main tool that we use. I use Zoom, but actually they've just put the prices up, so I may well swap across to something else. I think that's the key, is to keep being flexible.
Yeah.
So we don't tie ourselves to anything. People keep trying to get me to do Office 365, and I'm just going, no, we'll put our own bespoke version of what we do together. Thank you very much.
Good. And I know it's a theme that's come up before from people, getting into the schools, into the education market is quite difficult, isn't it, to actually get your products or services used? So what's your advice there, or do you have a killer tactic or a secret?
I think I haven't. I mean, I suppose it's the same with any product, isn't it? Is how did you, who bought it and how did you sell it to them? And in some ways, because we went through that process in 2020, we're now back at the start of that process again. I have got 400 odd people on my database because I've been collecting people. But it's getting to know the right people, really. Who are your warm contacts who actually could be friends, or actually we've got a lot of advocates of the project who we've brought along with us. And I'm now having conversations with them who that they will introduce me to the right people and help me to set up. I think, from a school's perspective, they have very limited funds. I'm looking at a partnership approach, really. I come from a public sector background. I'm used to putting together partnerships that might be made up of the police, the local authority, actually some money coming from the schools. But getting into schools, I always advise people, as when I was arts officer, to working with schools is really difficult. So I then set up a schools project. But the Worcestershire LEP have been fabulous at supporting what we do, helping us to understand the need in pulling together the product. And now at the skills show, they've supported us in putting that together. So actually, I'd say the Worcestershire LEP have been the most helpful in helping us to talk to the right people in schools.
Excellent.
So don't go in cold with schools, I would say.
Indeed. Good. All right. Excellent. And how can people get hold of you or find out more about the Curiosity Museum if they'd like to?
Well, so the easiest way is through our website. So if people work in education and they love the sound of what we do and they want to motivate their students to get curious about careers, or they know anybody who thinks they might have students or work in a school or college, might have students who would benefit from this, then go onto our website and you can book a demo. So if you'd like to see what the Curiosity Museum looks like and have a chat to me about what might work in your school or college, then you can book a demo on our website.
And what's the website?
Sorry, didn't mention that. So that's www.curiositymuseum.co.uk.
Fantastic. Manda, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been great.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favourite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.